Nice to meet you, Dr. Cliff. How we doing?
Very good. It's exciting to, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to chat through. And it was awesome just hearing a little bit more about your background and what makes you tick and what this next chapter looks like for you and just getting to know you better. So I'm excited to have a good conversation and talk more specifically about pet insurance and how that relates to all that good too.
Yes, I'm very excited to hear about what you guys do. It's a pretty cool business. Pet insurance is underutilized, but it's needed and it's complicated. So there's finally a company like you guys that can go through all the difficulties of figuring out which policy is best for that pet owner. It gets it out of our hands because honestly, veterinarians don't have time to figure out all these different services, right? We're experts in other things, and now there's a company like you that can help people get the best insurance for their needs. It's actually really, really exciting.
Do you think that every pet parent needs pet insurance?
I'm going to say most pet parents need pet insurance. And if they're not sure, then the answer is yes, they need it. They basically have to have a very decent amount of free cash ready at spur of the moment. You know, the great thing about insurance, as you know, with cats and dogs, is it takes the finances out of the question, and the veterinarian can just recommend what's best for the pet, and the owner can say yes, knowing they're going to get that coverage check back before their Visa bill cashes, you know. So I'm going to say the vast majority, and I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Canada, probably only about 5% of pet owners have pet insurance. And yet in Europe, it's something like 70-75%. So that's the numbers we need to get to, is we need to get to insurance being the norm.
Totally hear that. And it's even less than that in the US, which is shockingly low. But I think the tide is turning in terms of people becoming more aware of it now.
Do you think every pet parent needs pet insurance?
So I don't think that every pet parent needs pet insurance, and I'll tell you why. I like your answer about most pet parents do, but I think with the way that pet insurance works today with pre-existing conditions, for a dog or a cat that's, let's say, much senior, older in life and has a slew of pre-existing conditions, I think ultimately at the end of the day, all we really care about is price per coverage. And if you're signing up for pet insurance, it's extremely expensive due to that old age, and then you wouldn't get great coverage anyway because of pre-existing conditions, it may not be a fit. So I think that that's something that we really like to educate our customers and walk them through. Does this make sense? Do you feel like you're a good candidate? Do you feel like you're in good hands with pet insurance versus, you know, another option? Because I think at the end of the day, for folks that are self-insuring, there's obviously a category of people who have many stacks of 10 grand lying around that they could withstand, you know, some catastrophic vet bills, and they can afford to self-insure. But I think for the vast majority of us, like you also said, it makes sense to have some type of either savings account or a combination of savings racked up over time that you've just built up, as well as insurance to protect against those like rainy day issues that can come up. Because ultimately, if something happens one time, what if it happens multiple times throughout the lifetime of our pet? Ultimately, we just want to protect against those things. So that's something that we like to help folks walk through, is to help them decide whether or not it makes sense, and what that looks like in terms of finding the best price for coverage, because I think that's what matters most.
How does your company work then? I mean, it doesn't cost the pet owner anything.
Yeah.
And then you're able, so what happens? Let's say I'm looking for pet insurance. I come to you guys, and how do you help me?
So as a pet owner, you would find us through a bunch of different means, but how you ultimately get helped by us is we ask you a couple of quick pieces of information about you, your cat, your dog. So obviously like the age, breed, gender, and zip code, those are the main factors that actually determine pricing. So then we take that into account, but we also listen and learn. We actually offer, and very few other people do this, if anyone actually, to offer like a free 20-minute phone call where we actually walk them through like nuggets and gotchas that everyone needs to know before signing up for a plan, but then also learn a little bit more about what their budget range is. What are they willing to pay? Is there a cap that they don't want to go above? How are they thinking about coverage? What do they ultimately want for their dog. Maybe they grew up with a dog or a cat that had issues growing up. So like, I really want to protect against that. Like, can that be covered? Can you walk me through what those options look like? So just get to kind of that next level of detail. And then to your point, we are totally free to pet owners, and how we make money is we have relationships, and we say this upfront in the conversation so that everyone is on the same page. How we make money is we have relationships with all the reputable pet insurance companies. So if they decide to go through us and just sign up with our referral link, then we make a commission on that policy sold. And our hope is that at the end of the day, we prove our trust and loyalty to the pet owner, and we build for them and bring value and education and awareness and personalization to them so that they will want to work with us in the future, because we're still kind of an early days startup, building as we go, and would love to find other ways to plug in and be helpful throughout their pet parenthood journey.
This is definitely a service that's needed not only for the pet owner, but for the veterinarian clinic. And it is our job to, or one of our many jobs, to try and encourage and educate people about the value of pet insurance. But that's often where it stops. And that whole sort of compliance and success with recommendations falls apart when that final little assistance and follow through isn't dealt with. And it's still a lot for the pet owner to deal with and to try and understand. And it's understandable that they just finally say, I'm just going to save up some money. And then often they don't, or they can't, or they don't realize how much some of these surgeries cost and how much some of these diseases cost over the life of their pet. It can really, really make it difficult on them financially.
I couldn't agree more. I think what's so crazy is vet costs have increased 15% over the last, 73% over the last 15 years. And that's just a stat that we learned about once all of us have had our own experiences. So the reason why I started Fursure is I had a cat named Simba that just was my pride and my joy. And I still call everyone in my life that I love Simba, Yimba, and Yimby. So my parents, my sister, my best friends, like they all get called back because that's my term of endearment. And he ultimately was diagnosed with cancer. And I had no idea. I was in college at the time. I had no idea that cats could even get cancer. And treatment cost $12,000, which I didn't have. And I think, and Simba actually ended up passing away within a week and a half of being diagnosed. So that was probably the most traumatizing thing that had happened in memory at that point. And what really could have been a medical decision was very much a financial one, right? Because it cost over 10 grand. And for me, that was the first time throughout Simba's life that it really hit me that things can cost that much. And I think a lot of us have stories like that. And a lot of it is just education on how expensive things can be. But at the end of the day, it is a good thing that that we have all of these advances in veterinary medicine and technology that allow us to keep them alive longer and give them better quality of life. But it also costs a lot of money. And I think for a lot of us, it's just that learning about that piece and working with that, trying to find tools. Pet insurance is just one option of many, but to mitigate those costs over the lifetime.
It's not only that the costs have gone up, if you compare, say, an examination, yes, the costs have gone up 73% over 15 years, but it's also that the options available, the technology for surgery or medicine, you can do kidney dialysis now, right? Or even at my clinic, just the option of advanced dental surgery or digital x-rays and ultrasound and, again, going to referral hospitals and getting this human quality medicine and chemotherapy, that, the costs, people just aren't prepared. And it breaks my heart when they end up having to make a decision based solely on finances where they would have proceeded if they didn't have quite the real stress of having to pay day-to-day bills, right?
Exactly. And even basic things like an ACL tear for a dog can cost over $5,000 in certain parts of the country, which is shocking to people. But when it happens, what are you going to do? Not pay for it? And so I think that piece is a very acute and painful one. And then often a lot of folks, especially with all the new pet owners now, if a puppy swallows something, and of course they love to stuff things in their mouths, like if they swallow something and need to get it removed surgically, it could cost like a couple of grand right there. But I think to your point too, it just doesn't make sense for us to be paying out of pocket for that stuff anymore.
And the other benefit about pet insurance is it really does make treatments faster and therefore prognosis quicker. Because again, if you have a puppy that is vomiting And the veterinarian is trying to decide with this patient who doesn't talk, obviously, or at least in our language, and we're not sure what the exact cause is. Is it a medical issue and therefore we need to run a bunch of blood work? Or is it a mechanical surgical issue, therefore x-rays and surgery? And sometimes we have to make a judgment call because the family only has X number of dollars, or you just don't want to frivolously waste their money. But when there's insurance, you can do both. You can run the blood work and do the x-rays, figure out the problem really quickly, and that animal's going home to their family much faster, which ends up costing the insurance companies less in the long run. So that's the other nice thing is good insurance companies want the veterinarians to run the appropriate tests quickly because they know that it just gets the animal home faster.
Let's talk a little bit more about why is pet insurance important?
Wow, pet insurance is so important. I would say for two reasons. The big one is that medicine and surgery, especially for advanced diseases, cost a lot more than people realize. Sometimes even more than the veterinarians realize. We do up the bill and go, wow, this chemotherapy treatment is going to cost you $10,000 over the next 3 months. But it's also important because it makes the animal better faster when you can take money out of the equation and you can run sort of all the appropriate tests, whether it's a medical condition or if you have to decide if it's medical or surgical. You can run the tests and take the x-rays and do everything together, which in the end ends up making the animal go home faster because you get the diagnosis quicker and therefore costs the owner and the insurance company less money in the long run. So insurance company basically makes animals live longer and it allows people to keep money in their pockets in the long run. Why do you think pet insurance is so important?
When you look at how much things cost us, I think, and taking a step back, we love our pets more than anything. Now more than ever, they bring a ton of joy to our lives. And yet vet costs have increased tremendously over the last 15 years. Basic things like that ACL tear to a dog could cost thousands of dollars, maybe even over $5,000 in different parts of the country. Or if a dog will swallow an object, a lot of it happens to puppies these days. I have one of them, so I know it can cost a couple of grand right there. And so I think for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense to pay out of pocket anymore. And pet insurance could be a great option for us to mitigate those costs, amortize them over the lifetime of our pet, especially if they happen not just one time, but you have a couple of different emergencies over the many years. And you really never want a medical decision to be based on financials or to be based on savings that you have saved up. So that really happened to me with my cat Simba, which led me to start Fursure. I think ultimately pet insurance is just an option for us to all consider as to how it can help us with our lives and our financial well-being. So let's talk a little bit more about pre-existing conditions. So tell me, what's your take on those?
So pre-existing conditions, is when a puppy has something that's congenital or an older dog has a condition that's, say, acquired or historical. So they have a propensity for breaking bones or a susceptibility to swallowing golf balls, or they have a heart condition. And what we have to explain to people is that pet insurance is a business and it's okay that they need to be successful financially. They do need to be profitable. And so they're not going to cover your pet to the same extent, or the premiums are going to be much higher if there's already some X's against them because the dog or cat already has some expenses that are ongoing. And it's why it's important to get insurance literally from day one when you walk into the veterinarian clinic. Ask if they have a trial, if they have free trial insurance. It will come with no strings attached. You don't have to sign up with that company. They can still contact Fursure and make sure it's the right company or pick a different one, but it allows them to get coverage before even the veterinarian diagnoses something, which is really important. How does pet insurance cover pre-existing conditions? How does that work?
Yeah, no. So every single provider in the US today will not cover pre-existing conditions, which sucks. It's one of the reasons why we always say that pet owners should look into getting pet insurance from day one, right? When you first bring them home from the shelter or the rescue or the breeder, and before you go to the vet clinic, sign up for insurance to make sure that you're covered for any issues that can happen down the line so that you have full coverage when you need it the most, when and if that happens down the line. And I think a lot more folks are doing this now, right when you bring them home. And I think that piece is an important one to keep in mind so that you maximally have coverage. A lot of what we try to do and how we measure success is, does the pet parent feel confident that they made the right choice so that they're good to go for the future? And I think a lot of that confidence comes from doing a bunch of research, which none of us have time to do. It's always on that checklist. Hey, I'll get to this later. Maybe I'm having a busy week. I'll get to it over the weekend. And then over the weekend, I'll do it next weekend. And it just kind of gets kicked down the road. And then unfortunately for a lot of folks, then something happens that you just don't expect. And then you're in a tough spot with potentially a pre-existing condition that no company will ever cover ever. So I think it's just a good reminder for us to take that first step, do the responsible thing by looking into it early and getting signed up so that you're good to go and don't have to worry down the line. It gives you that peace of mind that you don't have to worry. Do you know what the average cost of pet insurance for a dog or a cat is?
I'm going to guess we're talking about American dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess. I'm trying to do the conversion from Canadian. I'm going to say 45 American dollars a month.
Very good.
Is that close?
The average monthly cost of pet insurance is $47.20 for dogs.
And I didn't go over. I win Price is Right rules.
A lot of people have no idea and how to benchmark what things cost relative to anything else that we know costs money. The average monthly cost for a dog for pet insurance is around $47 a month and $29.50 a month for cats. And these are for plans that cover accidents and illnesses, so comprehensive unexpected costs. And then the ranges, which I think are more helpful because prices are really dependent on your dog or cat's age, breed, gender, and zip code, so where you live. So the range for dogs is typically $25 to $70 a month. Anything less than that is very bare bones and not actually going to cover you when you need it. So it's important to check on that. And then the range for cats is $10 to $40 a month.
Right. So less than a cup of decent coffee a day, you can insure your little Fluffy from pretty much everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they wake you up, way better than a cup of dark roast. Way better.
I love that too, right? Because it's the first, it's the first love that you look at in the morning and the last one before you go to sleep. And often for a lot of dog owners, they're up early. And for cats too, they're nocturnal. So you hear them all night and make you wake up earlier than you would with coffee.
How do you feel about the all-inclusive wellness included insurance plans? I always thought they were kind of cost prohibitive.
I agree. I think for a lot of folks, like let's just segment pet parents for a second. I think for a lot of folks that want to have full peace of mind and don't want to have to pay out of pocket and want the most comprehensive plan that money can buy, I think that it makes a ton of sense, honestly, to be able to cover all those things, not have to worry about your deductible, not have to worry about restrictions, exclusions, limits, anything like that. But I think when it comes to the wellness offerings in the market today, when they stand alone as an add-on and it's not fully comprehensive, there's only one option in the market, honestly, and I won't call any names, but they're very few and far in between in terms of how much they cover it for the money that you're putting in. And I think for a lot of folks, it's a psychological thing where they want to pay under $50 or they want to pay under $100 a month. And obviously price depends on your breed, if it's an expensive breed, or it depends on your zip code if you live in a really vet costly area. But I think these are factors that you want to take into consideration, because for folks that are trying to nickel and dime it, and am I going to win out one year or the next, they're often not folks that are long-term thinkers, which ultimately pet insurance is playing the long game of over the next 10, 12, however many years, it's going to be worth my while financially to transfer that risk of paying catastrophic expensive bills to an insurance company and not have to pay that out of pocket, versus the wellness and the way that it works in the market today. It's very unlike human health insurance, where they decouple unexpected from expected, versus human health, it's one and the same, where there's accidents and illnesses, and wellness is just an optional add-on. And there's a number of companies that don't offer any wellness type offering. They say, hey, this isn't pure insurance, and we're not going to give you any type of coverage. So I think more options is good. There's a trend too of more comprehensive. So accidents, illnesses, and wellness, and fully comprehensive, like you said, very expensive. And there's also a trend of decoupling, which makes it cheaper, but less intuitive and less, helpful when push comes to shove and you want it to cover all the things that it could possibly cover.
We have health insurance for ourselves. We have house insurance, car insurance, extended health benefits. Heck, people buy extended insurance on the PlayStation they bought from the local gaming store. And then when you ask them about insurance for their pet, they don't seem to understand that this thing is more important to you than all those other things you listed, and more expensive if something goes wrong. And yet people don't really think about it as the need for health insurance for them.
It's a good point. And it's crazy too. Yeah, like you said, we care so much about our pets. We would do anything for our pets. Why do we have to wait until that something that happens for us to do something and then be kicked into action of, oh shoot, I should figure this out and I should, make arrangements. I think some folks are protecting their phones, but how much do we spend on that versus how much do we spend on our pets, and how much would we spend if something goes wrong? And it's interesting looking to Sweden as an example, where pet insurance, super high penetration, a lot of people, to the point where people think that it's mandatory. They think that it's mandatory, everyone's going to get it, and that's just the fact of life. And they, as a culture, insure everything that they own, big to small. And I think that's a cultural nuance. Whereas here, I would say that pet insurance, of course, it's not mandatory, unlike homeowners, renters, and car insurance. So it's not necessarily top of mind. But pet parents, we consider ourselves parents, right? Like, we're practicing parenting on dogs and cats before we even get married and buy our own homes and have our own kids. And so I think the mind shift has changed, and we're starting to see the tide turning in terms of people realizing that this definitely has value. It's worth looking into. Well, this has been so much fun, Dr. Cliff. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm really excited for us to have more fun conversations like this.
My pleasure. I look forward to reaching out to you again.